my seventh and eighth graders, I stepped into this role this year as far as being the new STEM teacher. And we really sat down and we decided that a lot of our students don't have a career path and they haven't really thought about what they want to do in the future. And I know that STEM is a huge opportunity for our students. I read a statistic somewhere like 75% of all future jobs are going to be STEM related. And so when I sat down with my administration and talked about Learning Blade, we decided we were going to step away from it just being called computer class, where they were learning like Microsoft Office and things like that. And instead, we were going to focus on STEM career exploration. So essentially, the way that I have it structured is the students have a week of Learning Blade. I'm actually starting my second semester right now, and I've made some adjustments, of course, because that's what we do as teachers. But I started off. I did the complete lessons with my first semester, and I did the full mission with them. And then I was like, this is taking a little bit longer to get through the background content, which is how I'm using Learning Blade to give them some prior knowledge almost of what we're going to be implementing. So now they have a week where they come in and we're doing the express mission, and they have the 15 lessons they have to do. And so I'm like, okay, we're going to start it today. You have until this time next week to get these completed. And they get to, I do kind of an interest survey, and they have 8 options. And then they fill out that form, and based on their interest, it's the one that we do first. And then we just keep going down that list. Yeah. So they filled it out. And this first time, the 8th graders, they selected to do the fresh foods lesson, and then or mission. And then the 7th graders, they selected to do the flu outbreak mission. Yeah, which was kind of a surprise for me.
That
But
is surprising. Yeah, that's
yeah,
awesome.
that was the first 2 that they selected. So once it's on that, I just explained to the students, like, look, this is self-paced. You can move at your own, like, you get to select. You have a lot of choice here. Some of them are going to take you longer, like the math lessons are going to take you a little bit longer to get through. You are allowed to use a calculator, which they are like, what? We get to use a calculator? Because they never get to use it in class.
Okay.
And so I'm like, you get to use a calculator because it's not necessarily, I want to see that you're able to apply the information into the formula or whatever it might be. It's not necessarily that I want to see if you can multiply or divide.
Right,
That's not my
right. Yeah.
focus. So, right. So, that within that week, they're in their computer on their computers, and I'm walking around, and if kids have questions or whatnot, I will walk them through it and say, okay, so this question, this is a reading portion, right? So we need to go back into the text. And I've taught math, science, language arts, and social studies, so I know that all of the subject areas are very intertwined. And I think it's great because, like, Learning Blade, it's not just this is just what you're learning for this. Like, it
Right.
covers all the subject areas. And so they're like, oh, well, this is math, but this is for fresh food. Like, how does that apply? And just seeing that correlation of what they're learning in class is applicable outside of school. I think that's huge. Um, because a lot of times they're like, why am I learning this? This is not important. I'm never going to use this. So to see that information is transferable is essential.
Yeah.
And yeah, so through that week, like, I essentially am just facilitating as they're going through and answering questions. And then if they don't get to the score, like right now, I'm explaining to them, like, hey, this is your overall score. If you leave it at this will be like the score that goes in the grade book, but we have 3 attempts. And I show them like how that works. And they're like, oh, I can do it again. And they get so excited about the fact that they can try
Let's
again. I'm
learn
like,
from our mistakes.
right, exactly, and I'm like, "That's what learning is. That's what learning is figuring it out." Like, if you didn't get it the first time, let's try again and see if we can figure it out the second time or third time, and build upon it. And they were like, "Well, what if my score goes down?" And I said, "Well, it shouldn't,
Right.
because we already went through it once, so it shouldn't go down, but if it did, like, they're gonna keep the highest score, and that's fine." And I think it's really important for kids to think and reflect on what they're doing versus just going through the motions. So they have, for each lesson, they have 3 facts that they have to write down that they learned throughout that lesson. And then they have to identify, I think it's 8 different vocabulary words that they ran across, and they have to define the word. Well, they have to put the word, define it, and then they have to find an illustration that they can copy and paste in that helps them to better understand and remember what that word meant. Like it's some type of picture that's affiliated with the word, so that the next time they see it, they'll be like, oh, okay, I remember this now. And then there's a reflection piece at the end where they have to go through and they have to reflect on how does this apply to STEM?
Yeah.
What careers did you learn about? What are you interested in any of these? And they just write a couple page like reflection at the end. And that's a separate grade and assessment that I use. And then from there, I always say, okay, we have our week of Learning Blade. And then we have a week where we actually do the design and engineering process. And they start some of the Learning Blade ones we use, and then others we've kind of spun off from there. And they are put into groups. And a lot of times I will send out a survey to them and say, what parts are you interested in? And then I'll group them based on their interest. And then they have to come up, or I'll provide them with like a design question, like what is this problem that you're going to solve? This is your problem. How are you going to solve it? And then they have to go through like the whole design process and come up with a solution, and they have to have a product. And then they also have to create a presentation that they're going to practice their presenting skills to the class, and they have to like justify it. And I always tell them, like, you better be ready because they're going to ask questions about your design, and you have to be able to defend it and justify why you did it this way or why you did it that way. It's not like, oh, just because I thought it was cool. Like, that's not the goal there. So, what purpose does it serve? And if someone makes a suggestion and you're like, oh, I didn't think about that, then you could take it and say, well, if we were to do this again, we would incorporate that and use it in this way and so forth. So it's been really awesome. Some of my kids, like the creations that they've done, like I had a kid who made a robotic arm out of cardboard, straws, and string. And yeah, and he put it on, and he was talking about like to have that. And it was for, he said it was for elderly people or people who were short, who couldn't reach things on the top shelf. Instead of them falling off on a stool and hurting themselves,
Yeah.
they could use this arm to reach things and grab it, and just different things like that. And we've done 3D printing and all kinds of different stuff, but it's awesome because I feel like the Learning Blade portion gives them the background information, knowledge, and exposure to different concepts. And then they're able to apply it in a different, like real life, real world problem. And they come up with that solution. So,
That's awesome, Bethany. So
yeah.
you have like this 2-week cycle, right? Or is it a little bit longer? 2
It's
weeks?
like it's like 2.5. So I do like a
Okay.
week of Learning Blade, and then they have a full week to do their project, and then there's like 2 or 3 days for them to present, and then we
Okay.
just repeat. Yeah.
Wow, that is awesome. I love all of this. So when you talk to your students, do they have any feedback about like what their favorite parts of Learning Blade are or any pieces that they really enjoy?
This depends on their personal interest, but I know that a lot of them really like the video portions where they are able to see it in action. And then they also like, I feel like I mean, the math is a struggle at our school. So I think the math ones with that, they're like, how does this apply? And there's kind of a little bit of like a fear factor at first.
Sure.
Um, but once we get beyond that, then they're like, "Oh, this makes sense." And I just have to give them a few examples, and then they're able to figure it out. I think the fact that they can go through it, and if they completely bomb it, they know they can go back through it and
Yeah.
learn from their mistakes. I think that's probably the best part. For me as a teacher, I don't know if they think it's the best part, but I think in some ways they do like that factor because it takes the pressure off of them
Yeah.
of,
It's
I
not so
have to
high
get this.
stakes.
Yes, I have to get this right the first time because most of them have had little to no exposure to most of the content and topics we're talking about. So,
Right.
yeah, so I think that just knowing that they can, and it's that choice, like they just have the freedom to pick and choose. And some of them are like, I'm going to do the hardest math ones first, and then I'll work at the other ones. Or the fact that they're like subject specific and they know like, oh, I love social studies, so I'm going to do these social study ones first, and then I'll start working on this one instead, and just being able to go back and forth. So,
I love that. And then as from the teacher perspective, what's your favorite part?
well, I love the fact that the kids can work at their own pace. I think that's huge. I think them being able to select and have a lot of student choice as far as what they want to do first, second, third. I love on the Learning Blade side, I can pull it up and like right now at my seventh and eighth grader second semester, I click on it, I click the lesson, and I'm able to see exactly how far they have progressed through it. And I can look at their scores, and then it allows me to, I mean, it's such formative assessments, like where I can literally sit there and say, okay, this person just got a 44% on this. So let me go check in with them
What's
and
happened?
yeah, let's see what's happened. Did we just have a bad day and, we
Yeah.
aren't doing what we're supposed to, or what does that mean? So I think that it just gives you a really good idea of where the kids are at and how they're doing and what they are understanding and what they're struggling with, because it's all so individualized and you
Yeah.
can see it so quickly. So,